Hello, Jason. Welcome to another wonderful
What
day
is
in the
up,
studio.
sir? How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm feeling real good.
You're fixing to go climbing.
Yeah.
So that's exciting.
Las Conchas, New Mexico. Yeah, nice places up in Jemez Springs.
And then there was like a spring, and you're climbing over
It's
it.
literally like a rushing river that's cutting underneath the rock, and you climb over that as you go
That's
up.
super cool.
Yeah.
Speaking of climbing and moving forward in our lives,
Always
with
forward.
the struggle.
Always forward.
Yes, always forward. I saw that today. And,
Yeah.
there's a guy, he's kind of controversial. So I want people to understand whenever we're talking about Carl Jung, or we're going to talk about Jack Donovan, or we're talking about the guy that ran NASA that was a Nazi. None of these things are, and I want, because people always like to choose sides and then judge other people off of, well, they had this person on the podcast, or they mentioned this book, so they must be, Jungian, or, this or that,
Right.
know. But we take a wide spectrum. We feel like we can learn because all is one.
Yep.
So we feel like we can learn from everyone.
Yeah, we can't, if we hyper-focus specifically on one specific person or people that only agree with what we're saying, what good is that?
Right.
You're always testing. So if we don't look to other people and what they're doing, then we can't test against what we have. Then we're just useless scientists.
So there's no, one, we don't give medical advice. This podcast is for entertainment purposes only.
Do not take
no animals were harmed in
Yeah.
any of these podcasts. They're always usually petted if they're here. And then next is we don't endorse, just because we talk about someone doesn't mean that we endorse them.
That's correct.
I always like to get the disclaimers out there.
Yeah, we are not endorsing anybody. You'll know when we're vibing with someone.
Yeah. I mean, you'll see
but
that.
We're certainly not endorsing.
No, not at all. But I want to talk about this because I got this article from Jack Donovan. He's written several books, and I've read a couple of them, and I've got his newest one out. The newest one he's got is about gods, like all the different types of gods and mystics and ritual and stuff like that.
Well, he is already front-loaded to the idea of multiple gods because he's a big proponent for Norse mythology.
Right.
So with that, making that clear. So then he wants to make that connection across multiple different groups.
Yeah, exactly. And I love this article in particular is talking about meditation and ritual as weapons against entropy. And entropy, he has a scientific definition for it, which he took, and I don't know if it's from Oxford Dictionary or where it's from, but he says this: the simplest definition of entropy describes the tendency of a system that is left to itself to descend into chaos. When a system isn't contained or controlled or isolated in some way, its internal order tends to degrade. It becomes less of what it was, looser and less integrated, and theoretically less useful or available to do work. And he talks about looking at this entropy and then meditating on the laws of thermodynamics.
So
System thinking, chaos order.
Yeah, I want to talk about this. So let's talk about order here. So I don't have any power over, and I'm already going to. I'm contending with the idea of entropy right now. I don't have any power over the motion of the planets.
Right.
I don't have any power over the motion of our galaxy. I don't have any power over the motion of our galactic center moving towards maybe a specific black hole, right? Now, those are spinning with a certain geometric pattern and rate. There's a harmony. When I say geometric rate, that's harmony. Harmony is there's a frequency to its movement. Its spin, everything like that. Lenticular motions. So when you talk about entropy, if we leave things alone, it says they all just fall to crap, right?
Right.
Well, last I checked, everything in creation wants to sit into equilibrium. So why is it that we're viewing entropy in the scientific stance, especially with thermodynamics, that if we don't contain a system, it falls apart? It doesn't fall apart. It falls to equilibrium. Does it not? So we're not containing the system of Earth right now. We're throwing it out of balance. So what does it want to do? We're going to perceive it as falling apart, but what it's going to do is fight back and throw us into equilibrium. And that may be at the expense of our life as a species.
Yeah. Yes.
So if I look at the universe and I say, oh, entropy, unless we control all these things, we'll get sucked into the black hole. Well, the reason you get pulled into the black hole is because over time, there has to be balance. That's what it looks for. So the scientific perception of entropy, I think, is actually anti-creational. The fact that you think you have to control these things because it's always in a state of chaos. Nothing about it is chaotic. It's in balance.
Yeah, and he's talking specifically about a system. So he says when a system isn't contained or controlled or isolated in some way, its internal, that's a key word, its internal order tends to degrade.
If it's contained?
But I mean, I was thinking of
did he say if it's contained? Or not contained?
When a system isn't contained, or controlled, or isolated in some way, its internal order tends to degrade.
So let's think about
it becomes less of what it was.
So let's think about our internal selves, right? If we don't control everything, if we don't hold a certain emotion in place and say, you stay there, or I act like this in a certain scenario, or do this or do that, or I have all these specific rules for how I need to define myself and live, well, you're not integrating with those things of what you are in your internal system. You're essentially trying to control them because you think them and their natural free movement is actually a degradation of yourself. So because you don't choose to integrate, because you don't choose to equalize, to find that equilibrium with these aspects, because you're not taking that, you think, let's take the materialistic idea of just controlling these things, putting them in boxes. We know what happens when things go in boxes, don't we? We talk about this all the time. And what you're doing is you're creating a disunifying effort within the self. You're disunifying yourself internally rather than integrating with yourself.
But I mean, there has to be, I mean, if there was no containment or control, if I didn't have my ego, then I would just go around murdering people just when I get angry in traffic.
Well, but no, that's a concept of morals.
But that's a rule.
To yourself.
Yes.
Yeah, because you know.
But that's a system that I have put inside of myself.
What is the moral? Do I feel good about doing this? Emotions are free flowing.
Well, I would feel good about, like you had that guy that was being an asshole to you on the bike path. It would feel good to end his life.
Yeah, I mean,
in the heat of the moment.
Yeah,
with him being
that's happens with a lot
super
of people.
Asshole.
And then they say, "Oh, well, I wasn't thinking. I was in a state of rage."
Right.
So there's a.
But we know there's a law of going against somebody's free will, so we can't do that.
So you don't want to do that. But then it's also, you got to think about this conceptually, right? If, say someone does go to end someone's life, and it is they could say it's like the heat of the moment. Is it really, I need to control my emotions, or I need to integrate and understand them? So because when I put them in a box, that means I'm not really.
I see what you're saying. Yes,
this is a very fine line here. And when you talk about like morals and like being angry in traffic and like all that other stuff, if I am integrating with the emotion, I'm not putting it in a box. I allow it to flow, and I understand the flow. That doesn't mean I'm necessarily putting a rule on it. I'm just going, oh, I understand that that's going through. And I would also understand that doing something like this does not have a good effect on my life.
Right.
By actually by respecting free will, you respect the natural flow of creation or nature, whatever you want to call it. But if you don't respect free will, what about the free will of an atom? Do you respect that?
Right.
Do you respect the free will of oxygen to move around and go into your lungs? Or do you want to put that in a box and separate it to you and only use it when you need to be using it, rather than just let it be where it wants to be? If it doesn't want to be in the upper atmosphere, it doesn't want to be there. But you can't control that.
No, I think that's a problem with society, is we've tried to control nature.
And I think that's why people explode and kill each other, because they're trying to control these things, and it creates this state of internal confusion. Mind you, this is hypothetical for me. I've never killed anybody, okay? I've never felt that rage where I feel like I need to kill somebody. It's vice versa for you. You were in the Marines, okay? The United States government asked you to kill people. But the thing is, so then where does a moral sit at that point? Is it that, I was in the Marines, and is it on the responsibility of the United States government because I shot this person? You see what I'm saying?
But that's a slippery slope, because
it's really interesting.
It's a slippery slope, because I could be a Knights Templar.
Yeah.
And I can go all around Africa and everywhere. Yeah. And the church commissioned me.
Yeah, and say, go kill.
Yeah.
You go take these lands back, do whatever you got to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a slippery slope.
So whether it's for the military industrial complex or it's for. But think about it, though. Their thought is, oh, we need to control the world. We need to control its entropy. We need
Yes.
to put things in a box, either put it in our religion or the perspective of our politics. And if people sit outside of that, well, they need to be eradicated. Isn't that the thought?
Yes. I agree 100%.
So then when we're looking at how entropy is defined here and how he's saying you need to put things in boxes, well, that's the problem we've had for such a long time.
Well, the cool part about it is he's going to clarify it in two ways. I think you're going to agree with him. One, he says, and he put this in parentheses at the end of the statement. He says it becomes less of what it was, looser and less integral, and theoretically less useful or available to do. And then in parentheses, he has work.
Okay.
So that's a definition of that for that. And I get that. Now, this is very important. He says a good word here, because it also pertains to mental processes, is that when a system isn't contained and it becomes increasingly entropic, it becomes less concentrated. So when I began to think of he's getting into the whole idea of meditation and rituals, but and so you can kind of see where he's going with this.
This is interesting.
But as far as like less concentrated, now I'm not imposing on anything. I'm not imposing on free will. I'm just looking at the situation as if there's chaos in a situation, then there's less concentration. And specifically he's talking about work.
How come you can't have a concentration of a lack of chaos?
Well, I mean, it could be either way.
No, I know that. I'm thinking about it. So, can you bridge me back to what he's saying? Because I haven't read
this
before.
A good work here, because it also pertains to mental processes.
Yeah,
is that when a system isn't contained and it becomes increasingly entropic, it becomes less concentrated.
So, the more chaotic the system is, it becomes less concentrated.
As is when a system isn't contained and it becomes increasingly entropic, it becomes less concentrated. I want to actually look up not his definition, but what entropic actually means.
Yeah, I think that's tough. The reason I say this is because when we look at entropy, even in the stance of a physicist, the idea is it's strictly about physical matter, physical things. And he's making a bridge between this physical thing
and mental processes,
which is a completely immaterial thing. And through making that bridge, the thermodynamics, the second law, they only call it a law because it's tested so many times in the material sense. But does it really hold true everywhere? We don't know that for a fact. So making a bridge to say that, from an entropic standpoint, it's just going to be chaos if it's not controlled. And if we carry over this physical idea and put it into the mental idea, then through that lack of concentration, the work can't be done. Yeah,
and I would like to ask him about the word control, because listen to the next statement.
Yeah.
Meditation and ritual can be employed as controls that impose order on your personal system.
See, it's all about control.
I think he's using this this is his type of writing.
Yeah.
It's very punch you in the face type of writing. So I think he's using the word control probably as like a hyperbole. From reading
hyperbole,
hyperbole. Kind of like I imagine if we had him, and we'll invite him onto the podcast. But I imagine if we had him on the podcast and we began to, it would be interesting to see his definition of control.
Yeah, because there's a lot of very root words that he's using, and I'm unsure of the mental context and flavor at which he's
But do you think
them.
So? If he has a view, and we're imposing this, but this is what I'm thinking. If he has an evolutionary view of us being apes, and then he has this, because he's speaking to men in this article, and then he has this view of men being primal, but we have a higher consciousness. He's clear on that part. So, but there's this urge inside of every man to be back into nature, to have fire, which I think is a good balance to go back. Like camping is wonderful, hiking's wonderful, for everyone, male or female. Yeah,
nature,
but I do think, especially for males, it's good to go out into the wilderness and learn who you are, as a person. You know what I mean? Like there's too many guys that are, and this is what he talks about a lot. There's too many guys that are stuck in fluorescent lighting and concrete buildings. Drinking a ton of beer, their estrogen levels are through the roof.
We got all these fucking.
They're not exercising. Yeah, we have that right now. They're not. Those are LED though.
Yeah, I know.
They're big fluorescent up there, but we got the pyramid blocking it all for us.
Yeah, we're good. Get out of here.
But there's this and I think everyone could agree, because we both have the masculine energy is fake. that's proposed today. The hero's journey is perfect for masculine energy. Like, because we have to be balanced, masculine.
You made a blanket statement. Talk to me about what you're saying about it being fake today.
Okay. This whole alpha male bullshit where a guy has a big truck and he acts like an asshole and he's ready to fight anybody at any time.
Yep.
And he lifts weights all the time. And, he's like, fuck you.
I can't cry.
I can't cry. I can't do this.
Because that's the definition of how we view masculine.
That's pretty much whenever, if you're watching.
Strong male.
If you're watching, whereas if you watch Marvel movies and you see heroes who are willing to sacrifice themselves for the greater good of humanity, and they're selfless and they have humility, but then at the same time they have strength. To me, and gods are a lot like that. When you look at, you have, especially in Greek, when you look at who was the archer, who I'm talking about. We're just running off the fly here without any preparation.
Why?
Artemis?
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll have to look him up. But
goodness,
we should both know this.
Yeah.
One of us should have figured this out. We study this all the time. But when you look at him in the story,
Artemis.
Artemis. Yeah, you were right.
When
you look at Artemis, or you look at any of these Greek god stories, you can see whenever they begin to be selfish and begin to be narcissistic towards themselves. And then they have this view of this false sense of masculinity. What happens? They get tricked. They get, they ended up, they get, I wrote an article the other day. Well, I didn't write an article, but I wrote a whole thing on it on Instagram about the one god that had to get punished in Hades, and he had to roll the rock uphill the whole time. So he's just constantly for eternity.
Always pushing up.
Always pushing up on a rock.
Why are these names escaping me?
And I said, and I said in the article I was talking about, this is pretty, one, I made a joke about my dating life, but
yeah,
which is funny, right? I love comedy. But number two, I was saying, a lot of people have this viewpoint of, and I'm getting back to control. A lot of people have this viewpoint, and because they feel like they need all these control mechanisms in their life, that they're stressed out because I had somebody talk to me the other day about this. They're like, I go to the store, my wife doesn't have the list ready. She's just kind of bombing down the aisles, just grabbing whatever. He's like, so he goes to her and he goes, I'm ready to leave. She's like, what do you mean? He goes, you didn't have the list. I'm here to get the list and go get specific things. People live their life that way.
Oh yeah.
Like at 8:15, they have a meeting. If the person's 5 minutes late, it throws their whole day off.
That's correct.
Because it's control.
Yeah, they're all control. And what happens when one fails?
It's going to fail.
Well, they're attached to the control mechanism.
It's going to fail.
They're not actually integrated with the flow of things. That's what I'm saying. They think that they can structure themselves outside of nature and its natural flow. And that's why I'm contending with what he is saying.
Yeah, and he's trying to make a big bridge, and I get that. He said meditation ritual can be employed as controls and impose order on your personal system and keep it from descending into chaos to maintain its concentration.
It makes it more fragile.
Yeah, so if we look at the idea of meditation, or we look at the idea of doing ritual, which Ra talks about ritual, you have to be careful with those. But they are good, like if you want to sit there and meditate and hold some beads.
Yeah.
And touch them and, like the Catholic Church does or whatever.
It helps you move into the meditative state, but you don't become attached to the beads, then fine.
But I think we all have a personal system. I mean, you have certain things that you do so we have to look at the individual and the responsibility of creating. Like for me, I know when I'm out of my system. And I don't know if you're, like I told,
I just don't think system is the right word.
I like the word myself because it to me it's creating order just in my head. The word system is like it's like, oh, okay. I feel comfortable with the word system, and I think it's our Western philosophy. And I'm going to use a word, productivity.
Yeah,
is huge. In our society.
Yeah.
So I think I think the word, but let's get into the article because he's going to explain it. Rituals can be performed for a wide variety of purposes. But key subordinate functions of ritual repetition are the affirmation, confirmation, and renewal of the bond to the group. So, he's talking about like if it's a group of people and they're doing this. But if you have meditation practices where you're with multiple people.
Yeah, if they want to show up.
Yeah, that's up to them. But purposes, when you do reputation of meditation, it's an affirmation, a confirmation, and a renewal. There's a
that I'm affirming a meditative state. There, it is refreshing after the fact of doing the meditation, and there is a confirmation. Is that what he said?
Yeah, a confirmation and renewal of the bond to the group's shared identity, the group's defining narrative, and the group's shared hierarchy of values. And he talks about this religious people going to church. It's Sunday morning at 11 a.m.
Right.
Here in the United States. So for some people, and we've talked about how false that can be and all that, but for some people that's guiding, that's grounding them to get away from that hectic 6 days work week that's been imposed on us. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And gets us to be internally focused, even though the message may be wrong, and we've talked about that, but it still creates this peacefulness inside of them that they are being spiritual. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Prayer could be the same thing as meditation. They've done,
it's a lower form of meditation.
Yeah, they've done where they've taken the mind of somebody that's meditating and somebody that's praying, and and the mind does the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's just a form of meditation.
Correct.
But he says religious people return to church to perform the same rite at the same time every week, year, or month, or even the same time every day together. This repetition reminds and reiterates and recommits the individual to the group shared cosmological narrative, and to the hierarchy of values, its holy order. So this is what Jung was talking about. We have the Jung book too.
And he used the big G when he should use the little g.
Yeah. But this is the same thing. This is where the problem with religion is where it begins to take over free will, and then it begins to mix with the state, and we talked about that. People returning from a repeated ritual that was immersive and engaging for them will often express that they feel renewed or reinvigorated in some way, that they feel firmer, more grounded, more certain of their place and purpose.
So
ayahuasca journey in South America,
or even go something simpler.
An Indian sauna.
Say for instance, I play Xbox.
Right.
I don't have one, but say for instance, I play Xbox. It's all well and good.
Mm-hmm.
But you remember when they introduced Xbox Live? Back in
that was when was that? Yeah,
3 maybe.
Yeah, and people began to.
And then what happened? Then it was like I wasn't just playing with myself or 4 people here. I got to play with the collective.
Yes.
Something changed. And then you felt good about going on Xbox Live.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it has to be something so specific as religion. I think we tend to, first of all, you're on Xbox. So if you're on it and somebody else is on it and they're both on Xbox Live, we already have something in common. Do we not?
A shared passion.
We already have a shared passion.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you're on the same game I'm on. Yeah, there's shared passion number 2. Oh, you want to join in my match? Shared passion number 3. And now we can have a conversation. So you're like, if all goes well, I guess in the competitive sense, like you win, it's like, oh, you feel good about doing that with the team. And so I think outside of, just religion itself, I think the act of coming together, I don't think it's so much the ritual. I think we enjoy the aspect of oneness.
Yes, I agree.
That's the key driver at the core.
Listen to this. He says this: we are who we are because we do this thing together that structures our internal and collective reality. Yeah.
And so where I find a split in his blended philosophy here is that I'm worried about entropy. I need to bucket things off in the mind. That's a disunifying principle. But then I talk about bringing people together in a collective group for a ritual. I can't have a disunifying principle and then apply a ritual.
Yes.
Do you see what I'm saying? About that, it's so negating in the logic, it doesn't work. Is that clear?
Yeah. No, I get 100% what you're saying. He said this, likewise, there are many styles and techniques of meditation, and the ultimate end of one discipline. And I think that word should have been used.
Go ahead.
Maybe discipline. Discipline could have been used instead of order or systems.
Or system. I think discipline is nice.
Likewise,
discipline says, I'm willing to put in the work.
Well, discipline also puts 100% responsibility on you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's a more appropriate.
I need to be disciplined and not eat this donut.
That's a more appropriate word.
Likewise, there are many styles and techniques of meditation, and the ultimate end of one discipline may vary substantially from the ultimate end, or he uses this word, telos. I don't know what that word means.
Yeah, telos.
Telos.
Yeah, it's a Greek word here. I gotta look it up. It's a term used by Aristotle. There we go. It refers to the full potential or inherent purpose or objective of a person or thing. So telos is also what the Germans call zeal. It's that point of focus of your evolution. Where do you achieve that telos? What is that? You need to always fix that in your mind of where you need to be.
Yeah, and he says, while there is value to be had in trying all of them to explore what they have to offer, I think it's important to look at the why of the practice and not only its technique, which he's talking about meditation, and you know about this. I think this is really important. Everybody, and I think I agree with him 100% what he's saying here. Everybody's looking at the technique and then trying, let me try this app. Mm-hmm. Let me do this. This transcendental meditation worked for me. I got the secret mantra.
But what's the why?
Yeah. Why are you meditating?
I can tell you why I do it. Evolution. That's my why. Yeah, for outside all the techniques and everything else that's happened, all the people that put it in its box, I meditate for evolution of myself, others, and the planet. That's just what it is.
And I want us to dive into this next line because I think it's
swan dive head first.
You're in a swan dive. I want us to swan dive
into water or cement.
I don't know yet. We're just gonna walk the cliff's edge and just jump off.
That's what I like doing.
If a practice, because this is the next line, if a practice is philosophically aimed at the void. So what's the void? I don't understand what the void is. If a practice is philosophically aimed at the void, at entropy and non-differentiation. I get the non-differentiation
So you're
part.
saying the void, open, endless vastness. It's not in a box. So if my focus is out on this thing, which he says lacks concentration, and I got to tell him, remember I talked about the 6-to-1 ratio? It's probably even more than that. 95, maybe even higher percent of all things in our universe is dark matter. You can't see it. So that seems pretty concentrated, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Of the space unseen?
I think maybe it's our consciousness that views through our limited interpretation that views whether we're in a void or not. Because I get that, and I don't know if it's just an emotional feel. I don't think it's emotional. But there's like a North Star that's inside of me.
Work me through this. Tell me more.
There's like there's like a North Star that's inside of me when I know if I'm on, and I call it being on the path.
Yeah.
So if I'm on the path or not, I know. I know. I just know. I have this deep internal North Star.
Yeah.
Where I know, okay, I didn't do my affirmations this morning. I didn't meditate. I ate a bad bowl of cereal. Well, I don't have that stuff even in my cabinet, but if I did, and then I ate 2 donuts, and then I drank an energy drink, and then I'm super pumped up off of caffeine, so I'm going to work 6 hours straight, and then I'm not going to go outside, I'm not going to get in sunlight, I'm not going to go work out, and then I'm going to binge watch TV the rest of the day, and then I'm going to get some Uber Eats ordered. I'm thinking of me being like totally off the path, how that would look.
Yeah, Jason Rigby's missile guidance system is off.
But to me, so I kind of...
How would you... This is a good point.
But it's different for everyone.
The thing is, do you listen to it? A lot of people have that missile guidance system, that knowing or that pointing of direction.
I become more self-aware.
It's that internal compass. And it's there, but people ignore it all the time.
Well, I mean, on a more personal note, it's the reason I deleted dating apps.
Yeah.
I mean, I just, at this time in my life, I don't need that. And I got so... I got so caught up into the shallowness of the same thing over and over again, and then having the same conversations and meeting new people, and then is this a hookup? Are we going to be friends with benefits? Are we going to, do you want a relationship? It's all
these systems.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
And I'm just going to slip back into
labels more than systems. Yeah, and then it's like this dance of, are you compatible or not? And it was just. For me, that was chaos. That was me, and there's nothing wrong with that. And people that have dating apps, I'm all for them. But it's a great way to meet people. But for me, that was taking me off of my path right now in my life.
Well, you were using that as your compass technologically, and not yourself.
Yeah, externally, I was looking for something. Externally, I was looking for fun.
Yeah,
because I wouldn't say love. It was more for fun, and in that fun, there is a process that you're dealing with human beings, and human beings aren't used for my pleasure.
Correct.
So, and I'm not just talking sexually. It could be, I mean, there's people out there that use humans at work to further their career. It's the same process.
Correct.
So I began to realize that I'm not into any of this shallow water, because the orca will come by and
it'll beach itself and then eat you.
Yeah, I don't want to be this little shallow seal.
No, but I appreciate you for being honest about this and bringing up these other parts of yourself, the undiscovered self. But I think that creating all these systems creates that chaos. Look at our financial markets. We created all these systems. Chaos.
Yeah.
Think about our government. We create all these rules. Even more chaos. You begin to over-restrict, and these systems build up pressure and then just fucking explode. Happens every time. Because you are trying to put these things, rather than integrating with these flows and understanding a natural balance, you try and create artificial ones all the time with everything that we do. And then through the creation of these artificial controls, all these control mechanisms, these levers, when one snaps that we're attached to, they all fall.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Does that make sense?
I get that. It's like socialism was around Stalin's time. I mean, what did he was there for 30 years.
Yep.
A ruler. And
That's a long time.
Well, Putin's at like 22 or 23 years.
30 years.
As a dictator.
Yeah, he was like Putin's 98, right? Or something like that?
Yeah. So he's revamping the Constitution so he can be in power again. But, I mean, his approval rating, whether it's done because he controls the media. I think most Russians love him.
We'll have to use Tartle for the real approval rating.
Yeah.
Tell us how you really feel.
Yeah, that would be fun. Kremlin. I love Russia. It's like one of my favorite places to go.
Oh, we know.
It's cool. I just so cool. The music's cool. The art's cool. Everything. Yeah. People are cool. It's just a cool vibe. But whenever you're looking at, and I want to get into exactly what he says with meditation, and this is where I want you to talk about. Why does meditation, because let's talk about the why does meditation calm you down so much? There is this discipline of, like he talked about, there is this discipline of focus that happens.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so hard to do meditation in the beginning.
People lack focus altogether. People have no sense of focus. They look at an ad for a quarter of a second. They double tap on a picture, throw it away, right? That's what it is.
You're on to the next picture.
It's on to the next thing. So when you ask someone to focus on themselves or nothing for even 5 minutes, thoughts are creeping in, all this other stuff's happening. It just becomes immensely difficult for them. So they're like, oh, let me try a different technique. Now you lack focus on one specific technique. Now you're going to jump from 1 to 1 to 1 to 1 to 1. And you find none of them worked because you weren't asking the why of what's really occurring here. Is that I lack focus. So when I move into meditation in a biological sense, my anatomical sense of my body, I'm synchronizing my thought patterns with my breath. And then that breath synchronizes with, the heart in some sort of sense, whatever ratio there is of heartbeats to actual breaths that are happening per minute. And then from that, it's flushing the blood and it's sending new energy in. And then that relaxes me at a cellular level. And then past that cellular level, the DNA becomes more loose and flexible. And so in that flexibility, my system can actually adapt to new thoughts that are coming in. I'm ready to handle different types of stressors because I'm flexible. My solution is always adaptation at that point. Is that clear?
No, that's extremely clear, yeah. I also look at it in a more simpler definition. I also look at it as internal, external.
Yeah. And
then a percentage for me, I look at it in percentages. How much today did I have an internal view? And then, like HRV, your heart rate variability. And meditation shows this, and science, people need to read about this. Heart rate variability is so important because it's a balance between the sympathetic and parasympathetic system.
Right.
And so it's creating, and meditation will pull you over because I think it's a sympathetic system is the fight and flight.
Yeah.
And most people are living in this cortisol-filled, stressed out, fight or flight, reactive.
Drained adrenals.
Yeah, just going constantly, and that's why their hormones are so screwed up and everything else. Where, to me, it's like, if I want to create balance and I have this sympathetic and parasympathetic system, I have, this brain, and then I have this microbiome, second brain in my stomach, and I want to create all of these balances. Mm-hmm. So meditation for me is just It doesn't have power in and of itself. It's just a tool for me to balance out myself.
To strike balance.
To strike balance, yeah.
That's why I focus on my dreams, because I have so much time and attention I put on my wake state. I need to put it on the state when I'm asleep. I need to find that balance of the self. So if I focus on the time of sleeping and focus on meditation, that'll help strike and find that middle ground of what's going on throughout my entire day for my life. It's that balance of the material and in the immaterial.
I have the best action dreams. Last night was a great dream, bro.
I was on a train from New Mexico to Alaska. And Alaska was interesting.
Last night,
yeah. Alaska was interesting. Not much going on. Few people went to visit there. A couple, towns that lacked any sort of real financing. They were small one-off towns, border towns. You know what I mean? But the dogs were there. And I was like, man, it's really hard to get you guys dog food up here in Alaska.
I know things are more expensive up there.
Yeah, I don't.
Amazon Prime's redone everything up there, though.
Yeah, but it almost felt like it was like a transition season for Alaska, where the snow was melting and had a little bit of the gray, and the rock was coming through, so you had that ice, snow, like a real mixed time. I don't know. That's what was going on.
No, speaking of this is crazy. Here's a side note, and you can look this up, peeps. Farmland owned in the United States.
Okay.
Who do you think is the number one farmland owner in the United States?
U.S. Department of Agriculture?
Mm-mm.
Oh.
I'm going to give you number one and number two.
All right, Monsanto.
Number one, Bill Gates.
He owns the most farmland?
Yeah, look it up. Number two, guess who number two is?
Who?
Jeff Bezos.
No way.
Look it up. Just type in Bill Gates
I'm
farmland.
looking it up right now. Wow. Well, Bill Gates may be the country's biggest farmland owner.
Why is he buying all the farmland, bro?
That's...
And then Jeff Bezos, why is he buying all the farmland?
Gates owns about 0.027% of all farmland in the U.S. Why?
I don't know. Does he need that much food? Or is he buying it? Is he buying it to do something great with it, like to put organic fields on there? I don't
know, dude. This is a hedge. I think
is it a money thing?
I think his investment trust bought into this because they know where scarcity sits in the future. They're not stupid about this.
So the Bill and Gates Foundation,
Bill and Melinda Gates actually own this.
Yeah, that's cool. So let's get back to this though. Speaking of this, this
totally
is going to
rabbit hole with that.
I love rabbit holing you. But listen to this. This is great. He says this, I have often referred to various religious practices as spiritual technology. Now he explains himself. As with many potential influences in life, if you don't investigate the final intent of something and you consume it or incorporate it into your life or start repeating its magic words without questioning them, you may end up running a program on your unconscious brain that you wouldn't have chosen to run consciously.
That I agree.
Spiritual technology, that's a great word.
That makes a lot of good sense.
Yeah.
Think of it just in context to what he's saying about spiritual technology. How many terms and conditions have you read and then people got their data taken away from them? Right?
Shout out Tardo.co.
Yeah, what was I ingesting?
Our sponsor. He said the technology may work, but not in the way that you wanted it to. It would be like watching a commercial or a Hollywood movie without recognizing it was designed to make you feel a certain way about a certain product or idea.
Well, think about subliminal messaging where you get like the bottle of Coke that shows up real quick.
Product placement, yeah.
McDonald's fries. Like, wait a minute, what did I just say? Same thing.
And then I don't want to get into this part for lack of time, but
someone's like, "Oh, read this; it'll make you feel better." But it's like some satanic cult worship stuff that they use at Yale Skull and Bones.
He said, like, life offers thousands of distractions and diversions. Millions of companies and political entities, I like how he said that word, and influences of various kinds are competing for our attention. Social media and television and radio are designed to distract you, to command and repurpose your attention. I love the word he used, repurpose your attention.
Yeah.
Family and friends can also distract us and draw us away from our purpose. Sometimes this kind of distraction is welcome and necessary. Sometimes it isn't. All kinds of vices and preoccupations can also become distractions. The world demands and disperses our attention. On a busy day, your mind may be trying to focus on 1,000 things at once, and you will start to feel scattered and all over the place. So this is where I think he's talking about the chaos and all that. If you never take time to center yourself, to concentrate, to bring your attention back to your purpose, your ideals, your values, your identity, even your own cosmological narrative, whatever it is, you will find yourself feeling lost and adrift.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very common sense. All of that.
Thank you. That is there we go.
I like the cosmological narrative, whatever that is. I love that statement because whatever it is for you,
go into this stuff.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure he will. Whatever that is for you is totally different than what it is for me.
What is it for me? What is my cosmological narrative? I know.
To climb lots of walls all around the world.
Yeah.
To have a data company.
I think my
have podcasts.
Cosmological narrative of everyone is to go back to the thing from hence whence we came.
That's the whole
SOURCE, going back to it.
Yeah, that's pretty deep. I'd have to think about that because we don't have to even think about that because that's going to naturally happen.
Happens regardless.
It happens regardless. It's just a part of who we are.
Question
We're going to die.
How quickly do you want to get there?
Yeah.
How quickly you want to levitate around and move objects with your mind?
So he talks about stimuli. We'll close on this. As a man's mind becomes more scattered and frantic, as he becomes increasingly disoriented, he also becomes easier to manipulate and control. He is more vulnerable to suggestion.
Yeah, the Nazis knew that. Come on. If you distract people and you send their attention in a million different places, they lack focus on the real thing that's behind the curtain.
Right.
They won't follow the trail of breadcrumbs or follow the money because you're pulling them you're telling them all these other things they need to worry about. That's why you don't watch the news. The news splits your attention in a million different ways. It splits your emotional focus. It's destructive to the psyche. And when I say psyche, it's destructive to that soul, that ego, the thing that you need to bring into balance. It's like asking it to be chaotic and just like overinflated. And what do you call that when people are inflamed? That's what it wants. Yeah. The attention is inflamed. It's everywhere. It's not calm. It doesn't have that focus. It's erratic.
So let's say somebody uses a meditation or a ritual. You know, maybe they were raised Catholic, so they're really comfortable doing the Catholic rituals, as long as they understand, you know, the whole process in that. Or they use tarot cards, that's a ritual, or they use runes, or they use, you know, whatever. I have all that stuff. You know, what do you think, like, do you think it's a good practice to, I want to make sure I word this right. Do you think it's a good practice, even though the theology may be flawed, if it helps you to focus internally and block out all that garbage that's out there?
No. Because it's reinforcing a bad philosophy that's albeit untrue. Even though you maybe have half of the aspect of like, oh, you know, that's, you know, this is a good thing to do. The basis, the fundamental why of why it's being done is the theology itself.
And that's why he talks about the why.
Yeah, that why is the church. It's actually not you. You got to think about the why. Just doing the practice, just praying, like whatever, form of meditation, form of concentration. But the why.
Why are you praying? Are you praying because it's comfort for you and you were raised in that traditional, you know it's wrong, but you still want the comfort?
So every time you do it, you're essentially still reinforcing something that you haven't focused on.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah.
You've lacked the focus on that why. So you're, again, giving power to something else rather than yourself and your own thoughts. You need to think before you even meditate, you have to think for yourself.
Why couldn't you come up with your own ritual?
Of course you can. No one's excluding you from doing that. I would hope that people would do that because it's asking them to look for their North Star, their missile guidance system.
Because meditation for some people can be extremely hard. You know, like for me, I can do it like 5 to 7 minutes.
Great.
But I started at 20 seconds, you know, or 10 seconds. But ritual seems to be more pragmatic. Less foo-foo. You know what I mean?
Why?
Like, I think because you have physical objects that you're using, whether it's these pyramids, and every day I'm going to place them like this.
What if I walk in a clockwise circle 3 times and then sit down?
There is that. They have that prayer where you can walk around those.
It's called walking
those
the circle.
Symbols. Yeah.
Walk the circle of one.
Yeah. So, meditative or contemplative prayer, I think they call it.
So help me understand then why
are rituals so important? Why are rituals so important for people to center themselves? Doing physical acts.
I think it's a stepping stone towards the end goal of meditating without actually having to have something that you're attached to initiate it. I think the ritual, for people that don't have the concentration and haven't built that up, having a ritual is like, okay, here's a material thing. I can work with this now, and then there needs to be a day when I let that go, when I realized that's not needed. That was only a step to the final outcome.
But I you know, like I picture an indigenous tribe, and they go hunting, and they've spent, 2 weeks trying to hunt an animal together, very primitive, and then they finally find that animal, and somebody gets lucky, and they take the shot, and with their primitive bows and arrows, and then all of them get shots, and then they finally bring this animal back to. Now, it could be logical and systematic, and everybody could just be like, great, we can eat now. We have this much food to survive. Now we're good to last us for, 3 weeks or a month or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's this whole ritualistic process that turns it into an amazing event. Like they come back and there's a celebration.
Yeah, because
and then there's a fire, and then they do dancing, and there's this whole process.
It's to get them in a state of mind before they eat this animal, correct?
But if you skip the ritual part, then it's kind of just like not cool and boring.
No, it's cutting to the chase. What you perceive as boring, I perceive as perfection. That's the difference. What people perceive as being bored, they're like, no, that's bad. No, it's like you need to have.
But don't you think the ritual brings about this tribal sense of togetherness, of oneness?
Why can't I meditate on my own in the middle of a desert and still feel connected with everyone on the planet itself? Why do I actually physically have to be there with a tribe of people?
Well, then why go to an EDM concert?
That's
when
precisely
you can just
correct.
listen to it by yourself.
But
there's a collective consciousness that happens in that moment.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, and the collective consciousness is non-local. We know this. Science has shown this.
Yes, but I mean, whenever you have a group of people that are united in a purpose.
Yeah, they have a preference towards that.
Right.
They have a preference towards physical union. I understand the idea of physical union, but I also understand that I can be more connected to more people at one time and the planet and the universe through meditation.
See, I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying I'm just going through the process of man.
People have a preference towards physical. I could sit around and meditate about thinking about having sex, and I could have a preference to that.
Mm-hmm.
But people actually prefer having physical sex.
Right.
It's just a function of preference. And when you do it in the material, there's a limitation to that. You're limited strictly by that material aspect.
Now we're getting somewhere. Okay. Now I'm tracking.
Are you tracking how my mind's working with this?
Yeah.
Okay. So within that limitation, it's all well and good, but that is the stepping stone towards the maxim, that telos that he talks about, the zeal, whatever that is. That is a stepping stone of the evolution doing that ritual. I'm glad to get you to that point. I'm glad you feel good being a part of a tribe. But you can even go above that. There's an extension far beyond that feeling.
It's like whether you're celebrating a birthday or somebody being born or Christmas.
Yeah.
Those are all rituals.
Yeah, they're just rituals.
But if you take those all out of society, if you took, okay, I'm not going to celebrate birthdays anymore. I'm not going to celebrate Christmas. No Thanksgiving, no nothing. Then and everybody's just meditating with themselves. It just sounds like a super like boring society. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm taking it from perspective of me being, I understand where you're coming from.
Well, then meditate.
I'm taking it as a perspective of me being your typical third density being that's looking at it like, because we still haven't gave a case of why you should meditate or why you should have spiritual practices. Do you know what I mean?
Is it boring because you haven't thought enough about the universe? Is it boring because you haven't thought enough about yourself? Why is it that you come together as a group to do these tribal things?
Go to church.
Because you feel a sense of elevation, right? A sense of unity and elevation. Is that what it is? You feel good? Do you feel good when you do it? Coming together, celebrating a birthday, doing these things, physical camaraderie. It's that bringing together, right?
I think it's more than that, and I'm going to piss some people off right now. I think it's a weakness.
Okay.
I think if you were completely, so this is where you're going to see me flip right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you were completely one and you were at the higher vibration of love and all was one, you don't need a birthday. You don't need a ritual. You would be in eternal celebration all the time.
Constantly.
Within of yourself and creation.
So if
there would be an equilibrium of balance that would happen where you would love everyone equally. You wouldn't even, you would love your wife just as much as you love the homeless guy on the corner.
Correct.
In an ultimate world. So you don't need
in a deep
ritual.
Level, yes.
You don't need the tools become the tools in your if you want to look at it
Toolbox.
The toolbox become extinct because you have become one.
Yeah.
You don't need a tool to get you there because you're always there.
That's my point. And so if you talk about coming together and like that's a step towards feeling that unity, what if you take a hyper step? What if it's like, let's skip the in-between?
But I feel good when I'm around people because I am weak.
Of course you do. Well, and I'm not saying that you're weak.
Because I need that external ritualistic thing that's happening. I need the music playing, the pastor up at the pulpit. I need that bias, and then I need affirmation from everyone around me that I'm doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Spiritually, I'm doing the right thing. Look, there's 1,000 people.
Why can't you just know you're doing the right thing? Why can't I be alone, comfortable?
Yes, here we go.
With a deep-seated assurance of self, knowing that this is the right thing.
That's the part that people can't handle.
And that's the part that people can't handle because they don't want to focus on it. A lot of people don't really want to know who they are. And they're scared to know who they are.
And they think meditation and these external things are going to help them. So they're always looking for something external.
Mm-hmm. Every single time.
That app, that meditation app, that church pew that you sit in, the emphasis on being logical and an atheist.
Yeah.
And your higher learning degrees, all of these things are external and they're not who you truly are in the identity of yourself.
Right. And what you may classify as a world that is boring, I classify it as a world of deep peace, a world of deep knowing.
Yes,
and in
I agree.
Knowing so much, and in feeling so much, and in listening and concentrating so much, you become one. And you become one with what would be coined as boredom. You become one with what would be coined as absolute activity all the time, a state of meditation that is constant activity. It's a state of constant work. It's a state of constant unification. That euphoric sense you get of going to that EDM concert, or doing that thing as a collective, feeling that all the time.
But I mean,
that's not a boring world. That's a world where I listen to birds chirp, where the ocean moves in its proper waves, where we don't harm ecosystems that need to be harmed. We're not killing ourselves. We're not burning ourselves out of a planet. We're learning to live with ourselves. The thing is, we can't live with ourselves, so we project it externally. And through that chaos that we have internally that we can't figure out, we throw it onto everything else as a projection. And we rake the earth and all the other people and species within it because we're trying to take from them something we can't find internally.
That's
we're looking
very
for it on the
important what
outside.
you just said. It's this external thing of taking.
Yeah, it's constant taking. I got to go take the time to go do this. I need to go take my place in this group. I need to do this over there. I need to pull it and bring it over to me. Everything you have is already there, but you're looking to find it on the outside constantly. Whether that's more food or more money, right? Or more tools or more podcasts, right? Or,
alcohol.
Alcohol. It doesn't matter what it is. You're constantly looking towards the outside.
Yeah, it's so funny here where we're at about 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'm here at my window, and it's funny watching all the neighbors come home from work, with the typical 9 to 5, and how many of them are carrying alcohol with them.
Yeah, that's where they stop. It's the pit stop on the way home.
Yeah.
Something's lost.
It's an external liquid that you're thinking that you need, or
to help
whether
you
it's
strike a balance or calm.
And there's a lot of spiritual people that listen to this podcast that think they need to smoke weed 24/7, and they basically put themselves in a fog
constantly.
They've just put them because they're trying to escape reality.
Yeah,
you're trying to, and they're like, I had a guy.
Like, it makes me closer to reality.
No, I had a guy. He goes, well, it's a plant, bro, and I need this in my life because if it's not in my life, then I just don't function properly. And I'm like, so this is what I told him. So I was like this. So I was like, you're totally reliant on a plant, totally reliant on a plant for your substance of who you are. And so you've identified your identity comes into this plant.
Correct.
I said, number 2, your dependence on something externally to make you feel that you're spiritual. And this is the same thing that we're talking about. Right then and there, immediately it's wrong. It's wrong for you.
No.
And you've become addicted to the dependence of this. And so now you feel like you have to light up or, smoke a bong or whatever constantly and take all these rips. I mean, there's nothing wrong with marijuana, but I'm just saying.
They're psychologically, physically, and emotionally strapped.
They're weak. There's
They've
weakness
done it to themselves.
again.
Yeah. You've put all your power into a little green leaf.
You should be self-responsible.
Yeah, you absolutely should. And I know you think that world is boring, but I disagree at the highest order. When you look up to space at night and you see those stars, you say that's boring? Does it look boring to you?
I'm not saying it's boring. I said as third density beings, as
they might
humans,
think
it's boring.
But how many human beings look up to the sky at night? How many people are awestruck when they see the stars?
It's drawn into our DNA.
You can't do anything about it. It's this idea of expanse. It's this idea of reaching. It's this idea of deep peace and stillness.
Because our consciousness
wanting
is
to
there.
know more. I know, dude. This is what I'm saying. So when I say these tools are about a stepping stone to what this end goal is, it's only viewed as boring now because you really don't appreciate creation in yourself for what you are. Hands down. You haven't thought about it enough.
You haven't got to the point to where, and this is something that for me, it's only been a few years. You haven't got to the point to realize what power you have inside of yourself.
Correct.
And the minute you begin to think of that power that's inside of yourself, the minute you don't need external things.
Yes.
I don't need this to justify not only who I am, but my happiness is not dependent on this external thing.
Well,
I'm creating my own internal happiness and joy and peace through who I am, through who I am. Because I am.
That's exactly correct. And, so what does that leave us with? One, I'd love to talk to this gentleman. I'd love to help him strike some balance. And then two, if you don't want to just jump right into meditation, well, then find something to concentrate on. Just one thing. And just repeat it a lot. Just I don't care if you draw 2 lines on a paper and get them to pull into one another or scry into a mirror or whatever the thing might be. Stare at yourself in a mirror constantly for about an hour straight. Build some concentration somehow, and it will start to have deeper, more profound effects through the subconscious. It will affirm things for you. It will help build that resilience and responsibility within your own mind. I don't care what it is, just focus on one thing. Do that for yourself. And by doing it for yourself, you do it for everybody else.